Hey guys, it's Erico from Recreated.com bringing you another Module 8 tutorial. So today what we're going to be talking about is Layers Part 2. On the previous video, if you want, you can select, click on the screen to see my previous video, my previous two videos on Module 8, the basics of Module 8, what it's all about, as well as Layers Part 1, where I cover everything from the play panel to the transform and post colorize. So what that does, we talked about the fade in, the opt in, the transition out and in, the play settings, the scale, the rotation, and how to change the colors on it. Today what we're going to be talking about is the pixel effects panel. What this covers is the saturation, the lightness, the contrast, the Luma key, noise, blur. We're talking about, we're going to go into the animation effects, where that covers the auto move, auto scale, auto color, and auto rotate. And we're going to see if we play around with a bit of the transformer if we get a chance to today. I'm trying to make this video very concise and to the point of the layers 2. Because I definitely don't want to go into too much stuff. So just a little background about myself, you guys. I appreciate all the feedback I've been getting from all this stuff. I'm currently a college student working as a part-time graphic designer at a local church of mine here in Jersey, and I'm just loving all the feedback that I'm getting. I'm new to the VJing world as well, so what I'm doing these videos is basically kind of going through the manual of Module 8, but making a video for people that enjoy watching videos instead of reading very long manuals. So today, let's get started. I'm using version 2.7, if you could tell. You could download it on the website. For more information about the basics, you should check out my first video of Module 8. All right, so we'll go ahead here and see the saturation. First of all, I've got all my content for my media set here is from Module 8, where when you download Module 8, it comes in the documentation folder, and you have this content as well that it comes with it. So I've selected image 3. From this image 3, I selected that. Now that's in this layer. We'll go ahead and look at pixel effects, the saturation. So what saturation does, I'll just go ahead and describe all these real quick. Saturation, what it does, it enhances or it removes all the color of the image. Lightness adds or decreases the strength of all the white in the pixels in the image. Contrast increases or decreases the difference between the light and the dark pixels. Luma key allows the removal of a specific color of an image, similar to if anyone's familiar with how a green screen works. Basically, you choose the green and it removes that color, and it kind of gives it a transparent to whatever else you want to put in the background. So Luma key is basically that. Noise adds grain or static to the image. If anyone's familiar with like TV static back in the day, when you get that grainy look, this adds to that. You could add that effect into your image or your video, as well as blur. Blur simply applies a blur to the image. So we're going to go ahead and start with saturation. I'm going to click on the word saturation, this blue tab. If I click it, you'll notice it turns orange. This is going to be same throughout all this stuff. If you click them, they turn on. So right now we'll go ahead and just turn on saturation. So we'll go over that. With your image selected, whatever image you got, you'll notice we have this knob here, which is black and white and max. So what that does, it basically allows you to change the saturation of the color of the image. If you move the knob all the way to the left, you'll notice that it actually changes the image to black and white. If I move the knob the opposite way to max, it actually boosts the colors and really amplifies the colors in a drastic way. But if I want to go a little bit more drastic route, you could go ahead, I'm going to reset this right here. You can go ahead and click on boost. What the boost does, it basically, the colors in your image will completely be saturated, and what that means, it really amplifies it and and boost it. And you could tell right here, the colors are going a little crazy. And you could go ahead and have the same black and white and maxed out. So we'll turn off boost, turn on inverse by clicking it, turns orange. And the inverse, basically what that does, every pixel will be changed to the opposite color. And then you can go ahead and play around with the knob to see your liking. So we're gonna go ahead and turn off inverse, turn off saturation, go into lightness. Now that we're in lightness, generally when you're in lightness, like I mentioned before, it's gonna brighten it up or lower it down. By default, light is usually selected. I was playing around with this before, so that's why you see it was on bright, but light is usually the default selection. And what this does, it basically, the light brings out the brightness into the image. What the light does, it adds more white to the overall pixels. If I and you can tell when I move the knob left and right, it adds more white to the pixels. If I add bright, what the bright does, it modifies all the pixels containing white and adds more white to them, leaving the other pixels unmodified. So basically just brightens everything up. It kind of gives it that glow look, if you can tell. We're gonna turn off lightness, go into contrast. Contrast, basically the dark pixels from the dark pixels become darker than before, and the lighter pixels become brighter than before. So we'll go ahead and click the blue strip to make it orange, and now it's turned on. Let me put this in the center. You'll notice the contrast basically will allow it to be kind of in the middle. If I click, contrast is kind of similar to the saturation. So if I click boost, it will boost the saturation, as well as if I inverse it, it'll flip the colors. The color values change to the opposite color value. So you kind of got that weird negative film look here. So go ahead, and of course you could always turn both of them on here. Comparison to the light one, you could either choose one or the other. So we're going to turn off contrast. We're going to go ahead and jump into Luma key. So in Luma key, what it's good for, what we're going to do here to set up this Luma key one to test it out, we're going to select the bottom layer and click colors. We're going to add a layer first and then click colors. Go into this one, go back. So we notice that we've got, let me turn off Luma key here. You notice that we've got on the bottom layer, we got our colors. We'll turn that off. You see it's under there, and the top one here. So by selecting Luma key, it basically allows the effect where the particular color that you want your image to be transparent, you could choose what you want it to be. So now that we've selected both these images on one layer or the other on top of each other, we'll be able to play around with the settings and see what color we want to allow to be transparent. Honestly, it depends on your image, on how you would want it to come out, and it's just a matter of you playing around with it. So I'm going to delete that one. So I'm going to turn off Luma key, jump into noise. Noise, it adds that grain and static that I mentioned before from like a television. You see, if I go, this will be very familiar to anyone that used to use like cable television and had that static look. So you could technically add this manually. You see that? You could add that static look to it. Let me see if I could, what it will look like with the video guy. It fills him up with static. Pretty cool. There you go. So that's what static normally looks like. Back to the image, which is still, and so the noise effect does have the colored, where it adds colored noise or alpha. It's just a matter of you playing around with it. So we'll turn that off, as well as minimum and max. You can max it out. I'll turn that off. We'll go into blur. The blur simply adds blur. So this is fast X. If we're talking about the Y and X axis, it basically gives it a blur like left and right instead of top to bottom. So you notice it kind of smears it across from left to right. And we could add that blur. You see that? It kind of gives that almost that 3D drunk kind of look. So you get that going on. Or we have a boxed blur, where it like boxes everything out. So 2 different types of blurs got going on there. All right, I'll jump into the animation effects for anyone that hasn't played around with this yet. So the animation effects are time-based functions that allow you to create a repetitive and dynamic activity in your composition. With traditional animation programs, you need to create the animation and then render a movie file, you know, like use After Effects, and then once you use After Effects, you have to render it out and then put it into your program, your VJing program. With Module 8, you're basically allowed to animate things, you know, with these tools, the animation effects here. So this means that you can no longer control the movement on the graphic effects if you do it in After Effects. But here with the animation effects, you can simply use a still image and just change the graphic and animate it any way you want. There are 4 animation effects. We've got auto move, which animates the layer in a horizontal or vertical motion. Auto scale animates the size of the layer from large to small. Auto color, it animates the color of an image. Works like post colorization, if you saw this before, but it auto does it, so it does it for you instead of you having to manually do it up here. So that's what that does. Auto rotate animates the rotation of a layer, and that works similar to the transform tools up here. So you know how you normally transform. If you looked at my layers 1 video, we covered this and how you would move this left and right to kind of choose where you would want that to go manually, your rotation, where auto rotate kind of does it for you depending on what you select. So we'll go ahead, and what we're going to do here is use the dancer video that we have from our documentation files. Select that. Now we're going to click on auto move, have that turned on. Right now nothing much is going on until we go ahead and see the speed. If we go ahead and move the speed left and right, the size, and we could strobe it as well. So we go ahead, and if you notice, the speed depends on how fast you want it to go. Let's go one by one. These animations right here, so basically the auto move, what it does, it allows you to do the movement of the from left to right, top to bottom. See, we have these types of tools that goes up and down like that. We've got a couple different auto move settings here, where it's in, out, linear, smooth, random, cut, sound level. So depending on what you're looking to do here, I haven't played around with too much of this. I know you could animate a lot, but looking at the manual right now, let me turn this off because that's getting me dizzy. Looking at the manual right now, you can do a couple different things where it's like sound in, the movement of the layer is based on the sound coming into your computer, which is pretty cool. So you could kind of do an audio level frequency here. You could do an in, the layer will move in one direction only. When it reaches the end of the specified scale, it reappears at the beginning and starts again. So it's not a loop, it starts from the beginning. Out functions exactly like in, but the reverse direction. Random positions the layer randomly on the screen with no movement in between. And cut jumps between 2 points specified by the scale with no movement in between. So you want to play around with these, and this is what I was talking about right here. In, out, linear, smooth. Generally looking at smooth, it's a wavy line right here with a small blue arrow. The wavy line represents a type of animation, and it's basically a smooth transition between the stuff. And now we can look at the direction of the layer movement. We can see that here we have a left and right, an up and down, and all 4 directions. So if you have this set to smooth, it's kind of smooths it out, and you could play around with these other settings like random. It'll do it randomly for you. And we'll notice again, if you play with the speed, speed won't do anything if you don't do the size. Now if I do the size, you notice it is going pretty crazy here, like that. You notice it's kind of spinning kind of fast, and depending on your speed, it'll go faster. And strobe kind of gives it that strobe effect. So that's auto move. I went a little bit too much into that. We'll turn that off. Go to auto scale. Auto scale basically makes it bigger or smaller. Kind of similar tools. You could tell it like that. It goes bigger and smaller. And back to the strobe. It kind of gives that strobe effect. And some people do like this strobing kind of look to it. And like I said, you could do this to any video, so it kind of gives it that emphasis on the boost. And of course, you could change the style of this to make it random. It's not all in one pattern. You could do a couple different things, like a cut, depending what you're looking for. So smooth is a general, it's a pretty nice setting. Of course, you can change the direction, whether you want it to go all 4 auto scale, or you want to scale the width. You see how it's going, the width is opening up, now the top and bottom. So this is a couple different directions. We'll turn auto scale off. Now auto color, what that does, it randomizes the color, the post color that you want. So if I want red, green, and orange here, I could go ahead and turn all this stuff. Great. So you notice right now, I turned on the red, and it basically boosts the red. Now if I wanted to add some color, some green, it'll add some green, and the mix of those two is giving us a yellow and blue. You play around with this to see, you know, what you want, depending on what style you're looking to get. And of course, you can go into like a random setting to get different random effects. I'll turn that off. Auto rotate, kind of similar to the transform here. You could get a rotation. And of course, there's a strobe, the infamous strobe. So you can play around with that. So we covered all this stuff. Please make sure to leave me a comment if you have any questions about specifically about what they do, if you have anything more in detail. And we can jump into Transformer just a bit right now. Basically, the Transformer, what that does, has 3 different modes that the Transformer does. It has the Matrix, which is this right here. It multiplies the image of a layer into a pattern, horizontal or vertically. It can also be extruded in order to create cubes. A patch, what a patch does, it transforms your layer into a volumetric shape, such as a cylinder or a sphere. Take a look right now, it's like a cube. We could do a different shape, like a sphere. Here, see that? Let's go back to matrix. Okay, we'll go into particles. Particles, what this does, it creates a stream of images similar to a fountain. So you notice on the screen, it kind of gives it that weird look. So how to apply the use to matrix? So we'll go ahead and select matrix. Let me change this media to colors right now, so you can take a look at that. The values over here, you're able to change the amount that you want. So right now it's too 2 by the x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis. We could add more or less depending on what you want, as well as the other axes down here. We've got the planar space, deep space, and extrusion. What this does, planar space creates a space or padding between each of the squares. So if you want more space between these, you go ahead and increase that. You notice the spacing changes there. Deep space, it creates a space between the squares on the z-axis. So when you start rotating, you'll notice that right now we can't see it, but it's basically on the z-axis. If you rotate it, you should be able to see this. We'll play around with it later. Anyways, so deep space, it gives it that spacing between the z-axis. Extrusion, what extrusion does, it adds volume to each square, transforming each one into a cube. So it gives it that cube look. So if you notice now, perhaps, yeah, you can see it gives it that cube kind of look for each one. So perhaps this is something that you might be looking into. Let me see, we've got some funky stuff going on here. So go back to the colors, turn off auto rotate, and of course this setting. And of course, now if we look at over here, we could flip each one if we wanted to. The flip basically acknowledges how many you have here and gives you the option to flip the images within it. So you notice some flipping here. So it allows you to flip the images here. So great, that's matrix. Just turn off matrix, go into patch. In the patch, like I said, we're able to make it into different shapes, 3-dimensional shapes, which is pretty cool. We could do, and you have all these shapes here, you know, cylinder, all these funky things going on here, which I am loving right now. We'll go patch. The thickness, we could play around with that, the thickness of the shape. The spacing between the X and the spacing between the Y. Let me go back to the default here. Alright, that's fine. So overall, you guys do a couple different things. Let me know if you have any questions for the patch. I'll play around with this later on. I haven't played around with too much, but it does definitely, it looks like it has some great abilities for you to play around with. Adding some noise, adding some different effects here, as well as you might be able to add into the sound as well with this. So I'll go into particles right now. Particles, like I mentioned before, it's almost like a fountain when you're playing around with this. And the particles, it just gives you a flurry of different images or videos if you want. Kind of gives it simulates like the smoke or water look. Depending on what you're going for. So the gravity, you control the gravity, how fast you want it to fall, the size that you wanted them to be, as well as all these other effects, the how wide or narrow you want the flow of it, how wide of the x-axis, y-axis, the life. The life basically means how long. You see how they kind of fade out. If you want them to live a little longer, you could go all the way like this and they kind of live longer in comparison to living very short lives, and then they disappear completely, if you notice that. But you can play around with it, do a couple different things with the radius, all that stuff. But overall, you guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. So you guys, I hope you enjoyed the video today, layers part 2 of module 8. It's definitely a bit more detailed about how the layers work, the effects, the pixel effects, and the animation effects. Please let me know if you have any questions about more detailed about the saturation, lightness, or the auto color, the auto scale, the transformer when messing around with the patch or the particles, definitely please let me know. We are going to go into a bit more in depth in later tutorials about the different effects and how you can play around with this. Please, if you are in the VJing community, share this video with anyone that is learning VJing. Definitely love the feedback that I'm getting. Follow me at recreated.com. You could check me out on Twitter, Recreated, as well as my Instagram that I'm always posting images up there. I also do graphic design work, short skits, videos, different things like that. I'm gonna start doing vlogging on my YouTube channel, so subscribe to my YouTube channel, like my videos, do all that stuff, the fun stuff, comment and everything. And like I said, appreciate all the support, and I look forward to making another video for you guys shortly. All right, guys, take care.